Once again, this episode is being brought to you by Diesel Fuel Prints. Diesel Fuel has been in the business since 1991, and Andy has been printing all of my stickers since the early 2000s. He's been a guest on this show, and he's a friend and somebody I've worked with for a long time. So I can highly vouch for his business because I use it myself. Highest quality, weatherproof stickers, easy online ordering, and quotes on any size and shape sticker you can think of. Full color printing and 125 black and white stickers start as low as $25. Free shipping on all orders at dieselfuelprints.com. And my listeners get a 10% discount if they use the promo code AWP 2021. Check out Andy and his stickers. He does a great job. Let's get to the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is Patrick Windsor of the band Blackmail House, previously known as Patrick Windsor and the Blackmail House. He's shortening it up, getting a band together. Really amazingly cool stuff, like sweet 60s pop with a really dark kind of goth undertone to it. Interesting stuff. Patrick's wife, Alex, was a guest on the podcast. She is also an amazing musician. Between the two of them, they're a little bit of a powerhouse. Me and Patrick go deep dive into music, primarily on this episode. And really great episode. Super thankful that he was able to come on. And as always, you can find the links to all of his stuff down below. You're definitely going to want to check out some of his music. It's really cool and inspiring stuff. And you can also find all the information for the podcast down there, merch, Patreon, link to the website, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, let's get right to the episode after this. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is Patrick Windsor of the Blackmail House. Patrick is a musician, and you work in the music industry too, don't you?
I do, the musical instrument industry.
Cool. How are you, Patrick?
I am good. I cannot complain.
It's funny.
How are you?
Patrick's wife, Alex, was a guest on the show. Alex Windsor, she was a very popular guest on the show. And him and his wife live like a 5-minute drive from where I'm at. So it's like kind of funny that this is all still, I haven't started having guests into the art studio yet because I'm going to have to build like a little set. But it's just funny that you're so close and we're still doing this over the internet.
And the whole thing's funny because it's like, not only do how often do you get the opportunity to like meet somebody publicly? You know, like we've never talked before, and then it's still virtual. So like,
well, I mean, I do all the time.
Yeah, it's true. You know, I do not. So, but it's all good. Also, my wife is very good at pimping my name. It's always like, you should have him on. You should do him.
She was like, you should have this person on. You should have this person on. She's like, ran down a list of people that I should have on. I was like, okay, well, I'll just start knocking them off.
Yeah.
So your music project, is it just you primarily, or do you have like a full band or?
So I do have a full band. When it first started, and the first like full length I did was literally just me. Like all my favorite projects that I've done started out from nowhere, which was like I moved to LA, so I started writing pop music, and then I was just doing it myself, and as it kind of kept going, you know, I've ended up just doing an entire record, and then I was like, man, I really like this stuff. I'd like to get a band together and start playing. So I did that, and I got a full band together. So it's always been Patrick Windsor and the Blackmail House. But now that I have a full band and it's not just me, we're gonna go by just Blackmail House.
The first record was the Resurrectionist.
Yeah, so the first record was Resurrectionist.
Yeah,
and that was all recorded by me at home in my bedroom.
It's an amazing record, and it's one of those things where I have never really heard anything quite like it, but you can hear all of the influences that are in there. like it for me. Anybody who listens to this podcast knows I hate putting shit on other people's artwork. Well, it reminds me of this because I never know if that's gonna how people are gonna feel about it because
I'm not so arrogant to be like,
I don't want it to sound like that. That's terrible. You know what I mean?
No, I love hearing what it reminds people of and sometimes I've gotten stuff where people tell me, it sounds like this or whatever. And I was like, I have no fucking idea who that is. So great. I'm going to look them up now. Now maybe they'll be my favorite band. So no, I love it. I mean, I'm not so arrogant to think that I, don't sound like somebody else.
It's for me, it's really heavy in a couple of things that musical groups that I really, really love. And, obviously one there that I'm sure you've heard is the Beach Boys. It's got a very Beach Boys-ishness to it.
Yeah, big time.
But the one that really shines through for me, that I was noticing today, because I was sitting there and I was listening, and I was like, who is this remind me of? And I think it's, the horns were really pushing it. There's a lot of Cowsills in there for me. Like it's very Cowsills like.
I don't know Cowsills at all, so there we go.
It's amazing when you listen to them. You're like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah, see, that's probably what's gonna happen. I'm gonna be like, I don't know who that is, and then I look it up, and I'm like, oh shit, I got a new favorite band. Fuck yeah.
Cowsills were they're one of those bands that people, when you hear their hit songs, you're like, oh, I have heard that, but you wouldn't. But people have never heard the name, and they were like a family child band, right? They were kind of like the
fucking Osmonds, my favorite band ever.
They're like an Osmonds, Partridge Family type of thing, where it was like from the little kids all the way to like, the brother who was the oldest one who kind of ran the band. And
yeah
they had some massive hits. Really, really great band. If you don't know them, you really should check them out.
Obviously I'm going to now.
Yeah. One of the things also that I love about your band that seems to be kind of more of a thing that's been happening lately is very poppy or music that isn't traditionally associated with dark or like occult type of stuff having that theme to it. Are you familiar with Twin Temple?
Yeah. We actually, we know them a little bit. We went and saw them in Paris. Wow. We just happened to be in Paris at the same time, and we had gone to a bunch of different witchy events around here, so we ended up just talking and shooting the shit, and so then we just happened to be in Paris at the same time. We ended up the front of the stage, and seeing their face was like, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing here? And then after the show, it was like, we're like, I can't believe you're here. Anyway, so yeah, they're great. They're super nice people. Music's great, but yeah, same kind of vibe.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously way darker and way more upfront with their whole thing, but but I do like that. I do like that seems to be more of a thing now, where more poppy or more musically inclined music. For anybody who's not familiar with Twin Temple, the closest comparison I would make would be like it's if Amy Winehouse sang about like the Church of Satan. I mean, that's
spot on. That's exactly what it is.
You know what I mean? She has got a voice. She's got a serious set of pipes, that girl. And actually, the first time I had it on in the house and my wife heard it, she's like, "Is this Amy Winehouse?" And I was like, "No." And then she started listening. She's like, "What the fuck is she singing about?" And I was like, "Yeah, exactly."
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, and it's definitely a thing about your stuff because it's so poppy and it's so like sing along, and it's almost got a sweetness to it, but it definitely has a darkness under there as well. It's cool. It's a cool mix of stuff, and it really attracted me to it right away.
Thank you. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was going for. I grew up in the goth scene, and like then started playing jazz at the same time. So maybe that's kind of where they came from, but also I started when I got into the goth scene, I was super into The Cure and Susie and the Banshees and things like that. And then as I dug deeper into them, the Cure was super pop. So it was like, you know,
Yeah.
kind of coming from the dark aesthetic scene, but then just like secretly really preferring, you know, mint car over, you know, pornography or, you know, like the the early goth stuff. So anyway, that's probably kind of where that came from. And I've always felt like why does horror music have to be this, you know, punk or metal, or also, you know, I love the Misfits to death, you know, and they've definitely got that market down. But you know, there's kind of got to be this, you know, kind of surface level horror that gets put in there, which nothing wrong with that. I love that too. But you know, sometimes there's more to it. Kind of the difference between maybe a very personal horror story as opposed to a fun gore fest or something like that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I think it kind of depends on. Yeah, obviously, it kind of just depends on what. Are you trying to bludgeon somebody over the head with with the gore, or are you, telling a story? I mean, I think it just totally depends on where you're coming from, and I think it works really well with what you do.
Thank you. I always felt like there should be more crossovers. We can terrifying stuff and sing along pop songs at the same time. There's no reason why those two things cannot be a thing,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And, it is a thing that gets talked about with musicians, I think, a little bit frequently on this show, where it's like the current generation and people in you and your wife's age group who are making music and even younger have the benefit of 60 years of music to pull from.
Yeah.
To pull influences from. Like in the 1960s, the only influences that the people making music could really pull from in a rock and roll sense was Elvis or Buddy Holly. And so they had to go back to the blues guys. And that's why all those, Clapton and Hendrix and Led Zeppelin, they were all just rehashing blues stuff through louder guitars. And then every generation, the 70s people got to have some influence from, both of those things. And then the 80s. And there's this generation of musicians who are well, I can grab from everything. You know what I mean? You can grab from, the Beach Boys, and you can grab the Misfits, and you can stick those things together. You know what I mean?
And I can love them both equally and make them work together. I think just having that amount of recorded music is super important. And, because there were plenty of other, pop things happening in Tin Pan Alley and, anything in Broadway and that kind of stuff. So there was definitely harmonically other things happening, but it was much more difficult to get a hold of. But just the change that happened between 65 and 1970 from a musical perspective is just astronomical. And then it just happened exponentially after that,
Yeah. That when you really sit down and look at the timeline for the 60s classic rock and how quickly it went from Bob Dylan to Black Sabbath. it's 4 years there, 4 or 5 years there where it's how did that happen so fast? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or you think 65 to 75. 65, you've got even pre Sgt. Pepper. So even from a songwriting perspective, and that was before things really got crazy. And then you think to 75 and we were in what, Motorhead at that point?
Right.
You know what I mean? Pistols. How do you go from the
Ramones exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Inside of 10 years, you go from I want to hold your hand to I want to be sedated.
Yeah. It's such an exponential growth period that it's hard to overstate how fucking crazy that is, from a musical perspective.
And then from 75 to 85, you go from I want to be sedated to fucking napalm death. You know what I mean? It's that's a huge leap. And then you're only talking about 20 years between I want to hold your hand and fucking, from enslavement to obliteration. Like that's crazy. When you really start mapping out where music's gone, it's crazy, man.
Yeah, and I think that and the variety that you get at an individual time, because if you look at like late 50s or early 60s, what you heard on the radio is not vastly different from each other, and if you departed even slightly, it was like, what the fuck is this? Who are you? Right. Burn this to the ground, you know, set up the burn pile, you know, and then by, you know, 75 or certainly 85, where you had anything from, you know, Black Flag and Napalm Death to the Thompson Twins and Culture Club, and you know all of that stuff.
Debbie
happening
Gibson,
at the same time. You know? Yeah,
and you had all the hair metal bands. Like it's really crazy when you think about it. And then you started getting, and then you know you got rap music, and you know it's like really crazy. Like because I was born in '69, so you know I kind of started getting into music in the early '80s, like my own music and making my own choices, and like you know it's like. I got to see all that shit come into existence. Like there was no rap music when I was alive. And then I got to see that become a thing, you know, and like, you know, like punk rock and hardcore punk and, you know, like all these different genres of music come into existence. And so I think going kind of back to what I was talking about where, you know, the current generation of music makers, young songwriters having all that stuff to draw from. I frequently see people like shitting on like, why are they, that's not right. Like they're not doing it right. That's not metal. That's not, you know, that's not rap music. And it's like, you know, you don't get to decide that. for the newer generations, like
totally.
You can either get on board or you can just be old.
Yeah, those. Yeah, I totally agree, and I hate anytime I hear conversations of what is or isn't music or what is or isn't metal or anything like it. Just drives me nuts. Like it's like listening to Ben Shapiro talking about WAP. I'm just like, oh God, just shut up. Like, you know, you don't get to make those calls. And, you know, I have a degree in computer music, which was very abstract. And like so much of that was just talking about what is and isn't music and using sounds and weirdness from that. So like I kind of came from this perspective of, everything's fair. Everything's fair game.
I totally agree. And I think of course, when I was younger, I was totally like that. I was like, oh, you know, they're not doing it how I like it. But as I've gotten older, I've definitely grown to the point where I'm like, that's not right. If I don't like it, I just don't listen to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and then what you said is the fine way to say it, which is the where they're doing it, I don't like it, and that's fine. Like go at it. I've given up. I've let go of those feelings of never in a million years, never anymore would I ever make fun of somebody for liking something.
Yeah,
or,
that gatekeeping shit has got to go away.
Yeah. You know, and I'm sure I did in my younger days, but I've kind of let that go and just. I get excited when anybody's excited about something, no matter what it is. Even if it's something I don't get. If you get into something and you get fired up, like sign me up. Whatever it is, I'm stoked. You know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like to hear that because that is kind of that is another mantra on this show where I'm like, man, I just want people to like do their thing and be stoked. And like I get stoked on people being stoked on whatever it is they do. You know, I have all different types of creative people on this show, from musicians to artists to authors to and it's like. Man, I just want people to be stoked on making stuff, you know?
It's why I love going to conventions and I don't give a shit what it's about, you know? Like you could tell me like there's a stamp collecting convention. Do you want to go? I'd be like, fuck yeah, I want to go. Dude, tell me about it. I don't know anything about it. Tell me what's so exciting about it. I just want to be with people who are excited about something. So like, you know, sign me up, whatever it is. Quilting convention? Hell yeah, let's do this, you know?
That's amazing. I love it. I love that. So, you know, I would assume that with things opening back up, and I saw Alex was starting to play some shows again with Gritty and Pink and stuff. Are you going to start trying to get the Blackmail stuff into a live setting?
Yeah, totally. So, you know, we had booked a show for like May 2020. We like finally were going to come out and then immediately that ended. So and then we were practicing for a while, and then we tracked a record, and then when things got really bad, we stopped. So yes, we're actually pursuing dates right now. So hopefully, start playing sooner than later. Got to put it back
Alex
together.
playing in that, or is this, okay?
Yeah, she
I
plays
mean, I
bass.
assumed as much, but I didn't want to.
No, you never know. You know, I don't judge anybody in a relationship whether they want to play together or not play together, because they both have their merits. So, but yeah, she plays bass, and
she is a person who's so in love with music and playing music that she seems to like whatever you got, whenever you got it. I'm into it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, she she'll jump in whenever she gets a cool opportunity. She's happy to play.
You mentioned that you studied jazz. I'm a total neophyte when it comes to jazz, but it's a genre that I've been listening to probably a lot for me over like the last like 3 or 4 years. And I don't know anything about it other than like, you know, all the names that you're supposed to know if you listen to jazz music, you know, like Mingus and Charlie Parker and Brubeck and, you know, Monk and all that stuff, and Coltrane, Miles Davis, all that stuff. But I listened to that stuff a lot, and I had never, ever, ever listened to it before, like 4 years ago. And it's one of my things now.
Yeah. Welcome. welcome to the club. You know, does that make you feel like, you know, like middle-aged suburban dad getting into jazz music as he gets older? Or? No,
I don't think so. I think what it does is I'm trying to figure out how I got there. Actually, I'm in my mind right now. I'm trying to figure out how I actually got there, and I feel like I got there through certainly it was probably some song came up on a Spotify playlist. I'm like one of those fucking Spotify nerds. Like all of my music intake comes from Spotify. Yeah. It was probably like Take 5 or something came on to some playlist, and I was like, oh, this is fucking great. And then it just put me down a rabbit hole.
And there you go. Start spiraling. Yeah. It's good. It sounds like you were like in the right time for it. You know, I started learning jazz when I was, I started playing. Saxophone was my first instrument, so I play all the alto sax on all my records, and which is nice because that's one less person to hire, so that helps. And then, so I started playing it when I was probably 12, and just in school and everything, and then playing jazz guitar in school, and then eventually that's how I got into college. But you know, even then, just playing in it, like it's not like I went home and listened to jazz. This was, you know, I started playing guitar in '94, so it was grunge, and that's how I learned everything. So I wasn't going home and listening to jazz, and it didn't happen until much later that it became like this thing that I fell in love with. But I think part of it was not, I don't think anybody ever gave me the right stuff to listen to. So I think that like if you're at the right point in your life and you get the right stuff, because not just because you like jazz doesn't mean you like all jazz, just because you maybe you like, you know, put on Giant Steps and you're still like, what the fuck is this? Which even for a lot of people, it's like, what the fuck is this?
Wait, is that Mingus or Coltrane?
That's Coltrane. Okay. That's like his big one. And that's,
I almost knew it. I was
So you were there. You were
halfway there.
That counts. It's just chaos. There's, you know, it's very fast stuff, and it's not for everybody. But it took until somebody gave me Miles Davis Kind of Blue, which really, really, really connected with me, and that to this day is still my favorite jazz record. So
I mean, if you're gonna have one, you know, I think in the pantheons of all music history, if you were talking to people who were educated in music and you were asking them about jazz, that record has got to be like, if you're looking for a place to start with jazz, start with Kind of Blue.
It's very easily digestible. It's beautiful, and to this day, it's still. I would say if a candidate for best album ever recorded in any genre of music.
Yeah, it's got to be in that conversation.
Yeah, and then sure. Nobody ever showed me vocal jazz when I was growing up, because it was just and I think that maybe that's a thing missing, was that it was all instrumental stuff, big band stuff, because that's what you learn when you're in school. But nobody ever showed me Nina Simone or Ella Fitzgerald or Billie Holiday, and then that also kind of really pushed me into really getting into the songs. And now it's kind of coming out in Blackmail House is really getting into jazz standards and pop song, jazz pop and that kind of thing.
Yeah, like kind of all of this like broadened like my horizons to the point where like I listen to Django Reinhardt all the time and stuff. And like if you'd have told like 30-year-old me I was going to sit around listening to Django Reinhardt records, I would have laughed at you.
You just got to make that. You got to make the connection where like he had 2 fingers, like Tony Iommi didn't he have 2 fingers?
Well, he was like, missing the tip of one.
Oh, that's the deal. All right.
Iommi was, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, you think Iommi's cool? Check out Django. He did that shit with
right.
two fingers.
His
Django's
music's amazing too. Yeah,
yeah.
He's really great. He's really great. And it was like a trip. My kids were tripping out. They're like, dude, you don't fucking listen to jazz. What are you doing? And then one of the connections that I made.
Fuck you, get off my lawn.
I'm like, I can still ground you even though you're 30. Yeah. One of the connections I made, strong connections I made once I started listening to jazz was that I'd remembered that in the 80s, I really liked the like avant-garde, John Zorn, like Naked City stuff. And then he started playing with some grindcore acts. And they would do like these grindcore, like free jazz noise. And I remember always really liking that stuff and like, but never delving into jazz any more than that. But now when I listen to, some jazz and it goes into improvisational areas and stuff and it becomes very noisy. I'm like, oh, this is totally like grindcore. And so it's like totally like connects in that way for me, for sure.
I actually just listened to Naked City for the first time. Not that very recently, within the last month or two. Because the place that we tracked the new Blackmail House record is at the Bunker in LA, which is owned by Jason Schimmel, and he plays in a band called Resurrectionist that's on John Zorn's label. Oh, so wow. He's part of that whole John Zorn scene, and he plays in Secret Chiefs with Trey from Mr. Bungle and all that crew. So anyway, he was like talking about exactly. So like he talked about Naked City being a huge influence on Mr. Bungle and all that stuff. Anyway, so I finally went back and started kind of seeing where Mr. Bungle came from and all that.
Yeah, that Naked City record, that first Naked City record is that is like
it's a lot. It's a lot to soak in. Yeah.
It's art. If music could be described as art, that's pretty much like if it's an abstract painting in musical form. It's great though. I really love it. I really do love it a lot, actually. And that's probably going to be on my list of things to listen to tomorrow. But Zorn did a band with the drummer from Napalm Death. Was it called Scorn? I think it was called Scorn. I can't remember. Somebody's going to be in the comments about it. But that was really cool stuff too. And so one of the, like, I've always been a fan of the Meters. And I've always been a fan of James Brown. And my dad was really into like James Brown and Booker T and the MG. So I always had a really heavy like funk bass that I came from as a little kid. And so when I started listening to a lot of jazz and I started seeing a bridge form between funk, jazz, and blues, then I went down like the whole New Orleans thing with Toussaint and all that kind of stuff. And it's been like, it's funny because every week I make a Spotify playlist of whatever I listen to in the art studio during the week, and I put it up. There's like hundreds of them now, and like there'll be weeks where it's like there's no metal or punk rock on my playlist, and I get comments from people who are like, what are you doing, dude?
I came here for the metal. What the fuck, guy?
Totally. They're like,
you're just sneaking it in. You're expanding their horizons without even knowing.
No Cannibal Corpse in this at all, dude. There's no Minor Threat songs on this playlist. What is wrong with you? So you were saying when we were getting warmed up and chatting a little bit that you had a metal band when you were in Chicago.
I did, yeah.
What type of metal? Because, there's like 5,000 types.
Yeah. So, yeah, the last thing I did before moving to LA was I had a metal band, and it was called Internal Empires. And it was really riffy. It was, I always liked to describe it as Meshuggah meets Refused.
So
wearing
a Refused shirt right now.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it was like a little punky.
Hardcore band.
Yeah. Shape of Punk to Come is pretty mind blowing.
That is up there. That is in the same conversation with kind of or sort of Blue or the Miles Davis record.
Yeah,
one of the best records human beings have ever made.
I agree, and we were definitely heavily influenced by that record, and it was very in definitely vocal styling. We kind of like had like a yelly vocal style that we would kind of like reference Refused, and we're like, why don't we do this like the Refused thing there or whatever? But yeah, it was super riffy. We used a really, for you guitar nerds out there, we used a really weird alternate tuning that we just kind of developed on our own, that I had to get I had to get by strings individually because the string sets didn't exist for what we were doing. So it was kind of crazy. It was a lot of like really dissonant intervals and off time signatures. Did a lot of things in 7 and 5 and just kind of general weirdness, but with
sounds Meshuggah-ish.
With a groove to it. It was very Meshuggah-ish, but a little more punky.
I want to hear this.
Yeah, look it up. It's all on Spotify, iTunes, all that kind of stuff. If you want vinyl, it's called Internal Empires. And if you do vinyl, please, for the love of God, take one, because I couldn't throw them away, so I just brought them with me, and I have like a couple boxes of vinyl.
And I will take one.
Yeah, it's funny. Whenever I meet somebody out in LA, I was like, "Oh, you're into metal? Please take one of these for me," because I just cannot emotionally throw away my records. So please take one,
dude. I understand that. I had a band in the '80s that was kind of a crossover, like thrash hardcore thing, and a label like did like an anthology, put out like all of our recorded material, and like they sent me like 20 copies, and I'm like, no, nobody but like the 5 people in the band want this. I mean, I kid. I think he ended up selling copies of it, but yeah, I ended up with a lot of copies of it, and it was generous, and I was fortunate to have them gifted to me. But I know what you're saying, where it's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with all this.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate thing about a band breaking up or whatever. I had other bands before that and stuff, and of course in my parents' basement I had a shitload of CDs or whatever, because you always bought them in like 1,000 at the time, and then like you sold 20, so then they just you just had crates of these things. So those I ended up tossing a bunch of them, but like the vinyl, I just couldn't do it. I just can't.
It's a record.
Yeah,
like
and it sucks because they're so fucking heavy, and like you move across country, and not to mention the insane number of LPs we have.
Yeah, I moved to Hawaii. I moved to Hawaii in my early 20s, and you pay by the pound to move shit by boat. And
so books and
I gave
records.
away all my records.
Yeah, and
I had records that I see now selling for 5 figures.
Oh God.
Like there's Misfits records I had that I gave away. Discharge records I gave away. Yeah. There were things that I kept that I would never have gotten rid of. There were definitely Misfits records where Misfits are pretty much my favorite. I always say that. I have like favorite bands in every genre, but Misfits are for sure one of my very favorite bands. And like my kids, that's like some family's favorite band is the Beatles, where everybody in the family likes the Beatles. That's the Misfits in my family. My children were raised on the Misfits. Everybody in my family likes the Misfits.
Right.
But I kept some good Slayer stuff that, that's probably worth something now, because I have first pressings of everything, because, it was like 1985 and like 1984 and like, but there were definitely things where I had a first pressing of like Black Flag Damaged that I know is worth like $15,000 now. Oh. And I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. Once it got away.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I have a friend who's in Vegas who has been on the show a couple of times. He's part of the charity Punk Rock Saves Lives, and he has been collecting records since he was a kid. And he's one of those people who listens to, you meet those people who are like, I listen to everything. He's that guy. He really does like listen to everything. So he collects.
Yeah, that's my kind of guy. Yeah.
And he's going through Discogs right now and like getting values for his collection. And he's only halfway through. And he's at like $500,000.
Oh my God.
I know, dude. He's like,
that is a lot of vinyl.
Yeah. And a lot of good vinyl. He has like he'll have like these random records where it's like some special edition soundtrack from Twilight. It'll be worth like $1,000. I'm like, what? But then he has like all the Misfits records, and like he was putting up values for those, and I was like, God, I can't even look.
Yeah.
I can't even look.
That's depressing. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I do. We are in the middle of renovating half of our house, and so once we're done, we're going to buy a proper, phonograph and stereo setup, and so I will have a need for as much vinyl as I can get my hands on. So I'm going to take it from you.
There you go. Vinyl party.
So aside from that band, like, I would assume, you're kind of like a lifelong musician. Is there any other stuff you have recorded? Like,
yeah. So I also played in a band called Tubring, from Chicago.
It's a great band name.
It's a very polarizing band name. Some people love it. Some people hate it. This was a band that I joined. They started in, I think they started officially in 92. And I was 9 then. So, but yeah, I joined them. They were on, they started out on Invisible Records in Chicago, which was Martin Atkins' label. That's like what Pigface was on and all that. Mm-hmm. And then eventually ended up on the End Records, which was like definitely very Mr. Bungle friendly label. Actually, Trey from Mr. Bungle produced Tubring's first record. But
oh wow, okay.
So I joined for the last record on the End Records, called Secret Handshakes, and we toured on that one. Tubring also got their like biggest kind of like their breakout moment was they were on an MTV show called Do Circuit Breakout. I think that was before me, and that kind of like kick-started them. It was like one of those like kind of making the band TV shows or whatever. Oh, wow. So anyway, that was the other. The
more you keep saying Tubring, the more familiar it sounds to me. Also,
yeah. You might have heard some stuff.
Probably.
It was very like experimental, weird, and it got more poppy as things went on. So we did the Secret Handshakes tour, and that was in 20. I think I was with them from probably 2008 to 2011 or so, thereabouts. Oh, wow. And then after that tour, the principal songwriter moved to LA. He wrote a song for CeeLo for a Twilight movie, and then kind of kickstarted his career. Yeah,
that's the only 2 times Twilight have ever been mentioned on my podcast.
Hey, check those boxes. Who's got bingo cards? Fucking Twilight bingo. Check it off.
Oh boy, yeah. I've never seen any of those movies.
I have no comment on them.
They were clearly marketed to a completely different audience than a middle-aged dude. So I never watched any of them.
Yeah.
My oldest son grew up with Kristen Stewart, and so she was kind of around. It was like part of his little group of friends. Yeah. And it was like I remember like the first time she was in a movie, I was like, oh wow, cool. And then like cut to like 5 years later, and it was like, oh my God, she's like one of the biggest stars in Hollywood.
But yeah, that's strange. That's a very LA kind of story, I think.
It's one of those things. When we first moved to LA, we were living in Mid-City, and 2 apartments down from us, there was a single mom and her son who was like the same age as my oldest son. So they're probably like 7 or 8. And it was like, yeah, he's like going out for roles, and he just got this McDonald's commercial. And then it was like every week it was like, oh, and he's doing this. And then like, oh, he just got the part as the new kid in the new Home Alone movie. And it was like, oh, fuck.
Oh.
Yeah, nice. He ended up doing pretty well with all that. I don't know. I think he's a lawyer now or something, but nice kid. Weird thing where those 7-year-old actor children have the ability to talk to you like another adult, but they're 7, and you're like, this is fucking weird. It's kind of like that scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where Rick Dalton's talking to the little girl on set, and she's clearly smarter than he is.
Yeah, definitely emotional intelligence level. Yeah.
And I think he has a moment where he's like, "Who the fuck is this kid?" Why? But yeah, it's like that is a good example of it where you're like, it's like a little adult. It's fucking weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife's in the film industry, and so like she'll be on set. She does hair, and so she'll be on set, and she'll be like, "Oh, we have one of those kids in," and I was like,
"One of those kids."
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I am a lover of all things Hollywood, so if I say that, I do not mean it in a derogatory way at all.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a kind of enchanting about LA, especially when you're not from LA. You know.
Yeah. It's weird. I still do a little bit of work in films doing like graphic design, like signage or stuff like that for props in films and stuff. And, you know, I worked in art department for a while in the like early 2010s. And not every job making a movie is the writer or director or actor. Let's put it that way. There's like 5 glamorous jobs in Hollywood, and then there's like 100 way less glamorous jobs that make those other ones look glamorous, you know.
Yep, that's fair.
But I'm a movie nerd, obviously.
Yeah.
We were talking before, you know, you came on. We had like a nice like 20 minutes of movie nerd talk, and now we've got another like 40 minutes of music nerd talk. It's fantastic.
Sign me up.
I love it. Nerd. I love it. I absolutely love it. And then you work for a guitar company, right?
I do, yeah. I work for Guild Guitars, Guild and Cordoba Guitars. That's my day gig.
What do you do for them?
So I manage inside sales and all the services and everything. Everything kind of rolls up to me.
It's a small company, I'm guessing.
It's a very small company. There's not very many of us, and I think it usually kind of blows people's minds when they see like the stuff that we pull off with such a small crew of people. But yeah, and it's a weird time to be in the guitar industry.
For what reason?
It's on fire. It's insane.
COVID. Everybody learned over COVID, like took their 18 months and learned how to play guitar.
Yes, they did. Yeah, it's bananas. They, everybody thought that COVID was going to just take out the guitar industry because they thought, nobody's got money for guitars and so many people are unemployed. But it happened. The opposite happened. Everybody who was still employed, which was a lot of people, not only were they still employed, but they weren't spending money on anything else. They weren't going out. They weren't taking vacations. They weren't going to shows. They weren't going to concerts or theater or whatever. So they just were sitting at home. So they're like, fuck it, I'll buy a guitar. And
they didn't have to commute. So even when they were working, they still had more free time because they went from their computer to their fucking desk, to their couch.
Yeah. And it ended up being crazy. It's been the biggest boom for the guitar industry I've been in the industry 13 years, and people that I work with who've been in the industry twice as long as me are like, I've never seen anything like this. This is just insane. So
that's great.
It's actually it's really good. There's a lot of new guitar players out there. Likewise, I'm trying to I just finished a new record and I'm going to do it on vinyl, and I went to get quotes for vinyl. Vinyl production is out of control right now.
They're been that way for a long time, dude.
Yeah, but now it's like the delay. It's just like 2022. I'll see this record, and it's like, fuck. So same deal. I think everybody sat at home making records, and they all want to put it on vinyl now.
A lot of bands wrote records.
Yeah. What else are you gonna do? So why not? It's great. I'm happy, and it's great that the guitar industry is on fire. As much of a pain in the ass as it is dealing with, supply chain and getting guitars here, because we just cannot seem to get them, as just not enough. It's never enough. But it's all a positive sign because it's a lot of people playing music, and that's That's a good thing.
That is not a bad thing in any way. Yeah, I think it's funny. When you talk about the music industry, it's like there's primarily down to like two sources of intake for the consumer. Either it's streamed or it's on vinyl. Like, I don't even know. Do people still make CDs? Like, do people buy, sell, or use CDs anymore?
They do. It's still out there. I mean, it's probably a bigger industry than you'd think, and I think that we're actually a little bit skewed because of that we live in a big, massive city like Los Angeles. But I think there's also like a lot of places that are in rural areas that still, consume their music from Walmart and things like that. So I think that there are a lot of places in the country that still do. Still
I haven't had a CD player. I'm racking my brain trying to figure out when the last time I had a CD player that I put CDs into. I guess like 4 years ago when I got my current car, it had a CD player and the radio didn't work, but the CD player did. And so I just listened to CDs for like a year until I replaced the stereo in the car. But I don't think I've listened to a CD since then. Yeah,
I do. I do still have a CD player in my car. I still listen to CDs actually. Because historically I always bought them with, I always wanted physical products for things that I really liked. So all like my favorite records were in physical product and not on my computer.
I would do that for a long time too. I did that for a long time too, and then I just gave up.
Yeah. Now I've stopped because I can't keep putting stuff into a small space. It just grows and grows and grows, and you're just like, what do I do with this shit? Like, there's so much shit. So the best I do is I'll buy them, used or whatever, and then I rip them or something like that. Depends on what it is. But
I mean, that's a thing that's crazy. Like, I mean, thankfully there's shit like Bandcamp where you can pay a band for the music if you want it, without having to actually have a physical copy. But I spent a few years art directing for this record label, Slope Records, and everything was a vinyl release. And then it was like the secondary afterthought was like, yeah, I guess we'll do a CD version. But it was always like just like a glue sleeve. It was like no jewel cases or anything. It was just like a pocket.
It's so cheap to reproduce now. It's like you can easily get,
that was the thing.
Which I'll probably end up doing. It's like you can spend $100 and get 100 copies that look great. All right, why not?
And cassettes too. Lots of cassettes in the underground. Cassettes making a big comeback.
Back with a vengeance. Do you dig it?
I like the idea of it because that was how I grew up on music. You buy the record and then you record it onto a cassette tape, and then you can take that record wherever you want to go. And then you and your friends can share records with each other. You borrow your friends' records and you record them. And so, and like, for me, how I learned about punk music, I've talked about it a little bit, but like I saw Fear on Saturday Night Live when it was like a one-off, like almost like a joke that they were on there. And I was like 11 or something. And I was like, I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so I started becoming interested in what punk rock was, because I would played hockey and I always played up divisions from my age group. And so all the older kids, they knew shit I didn't know. And so they'd be like, oh, punk rock sucks. Punk's terrible. Like, they all hated it and thought it was stupid. They just wanted to listen to AC/DC and Led Zeppelin. And I was like, I don't know. I think this is what I like. And then when I finally was like 12 or 13, I found a college radio station that had 4 hours on a Thursday night of just hardcore punk. And that was my entire education. I recorded it every week, and I had hundreds of cassettes full of all this stuff. And so I do have a fondness for the cassette tape, but as a medium to transmit music, it's the worst possible way to do it. It sounds the worst. It's the most fragile. Like,
it's pain in the ass.
You can't find players easily. It's terrible. But the artwork's tiny. Like, it's literally the worst possible package for music you could come up with.
Yeah, it's
but it's neat.
It is. It's fun to look at. It's never like the you know, like the medium of choice for sure. And I've had a few, you know, when actually Dark Matter Coffee in Chicago did a collaboration with Refused with their reunion album, right? And it came with like a cassette tape of that record, and that was like, it was cool to get, you know. And then
I would want to have it, even if I never listened to it. That's a thing I'd want to have.
Yeah, so you get a bunch, you know, I got those and some other random, like, you know, I think I got a Baroness record once that came with a cassette or something like that. And, or I bought it from an indie store and they gave you the cassette too. And it was like, cool, it was a collector item. And I think I've moved it a couple apartments, and then it's probably still stashed somewhere. But, you know, you just like, you have those moments where like you move into a new place and you're packing all your shit and you're just like, oh, fuck, how many apartments am I going to cart this thing from, you know, one to the next one, do nothing with it. So it's a hard, you know.
Look,
so
man,
cassettes get into that category for me a little bit.
I collect Hot Wheels. You don't need to talk to me about too much shit that I've moved too many times and ask myself every time if I need it.
Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff that are hard to let go. I know I had some like old Wax Trax cassettes, and you know,
yeah,
I don't know. Some there's a cool factor, but it's never as cool. I mean, at least with vinyl, it's this huge thing that you can.
Yeah, and you know all the stuff we did at Slope Records, it was like the vinyl came with the download code, so people you could have the MP3 at the same time, and you know.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's, you know, what more do you want? I could listen to my car. I could listen at home. Done.
Exactly. Yeah. I do think that, without getting into like a whole conversation about it, I do think that the streaming services need to find a way to change how people get paid.
It's brutal.
It's really not. It's not cool, like, at all. I think everybody can agree on that. Yeah. I mean, as a podcaster, I get paid the same amount as bands do for listens. So trust me, I'm in the same boat as everybody else.
Yeah.
But Spotify is like, as far as discovering new music, I've never come across anything even remotely close. The last decade of me using it and the last 5 years of me using it all day, every day, it's like changed my life. That's how I found about all the jazz we talked about and all the, you know, like random, like I was saying, like I love the Meters. I've loved them all of my life, but I didn't know anything about the Meters. And then I was like, oh, the main guy is Art Neville. I've heard of the Neville brothers. He was part of the Neville brothers, which was like not something I ever liked, but I was like, oh, so now let's see, what is all the things that Art Neville has done? And I can go onto Spotify and I can find the Wild Chapatulas. I can find, you know, all these different projects that Art Neville did that I would have never, ever known about. I would have just kept listening to the same like 5 Meters records.
Yeah, it's pretty invaluable. I think that, like, you know, I back when I, you know, first started playing guitar and first getting into music in, you know, in the mid 90s, it was like, you didn't have, if you wanted to hear something, it was because somebody let you borrow the CD. You could go to listening stations in the store or whatever. You couldn't just like, somebody couldn't just tell you a name that you just look it up. So, you know, that is really invaluable for finding new things. I still buy everything, like digitally in a lot of ways, if not vinyl, but, you know, I still buy things on iTunes and stuff because I want people to have the money, because I know that you know, me
You're in
listening
the same
to
business.
it. Yeah. And if I listen to a record on Spotify a few times, you know, the artist is going to get, even if they own 100% of the rights, a few cents. Where like if I buy it on iTunes, they'll get $7 or whatever. So it's such a difference. But you know, I definitely discover a lot of things on Spotify, and that's how I find. You know, if somebody tips me off to something, I'll look it up and, oh, that's rad. Cool. You know, I'm going to buy it.
I don't have any Apple devices, so I haven't used iTunes in like forever.
Or Bandcamp, whatever, you know, in a lot of ways, you know. I definitely use that as well.
I you know, like I was saying, like we're going to have a really kick-ass home stereo set up in the next probably 6 months, and I'm gonna be going vinyl crazy, and every single thing that I like and hear, I'm gonna start buying. My wife's probably gonna divorce me.
Well, good thing Amoeba's open again.
Like,
so
she's gonna be like, "Do we need all these jazz records?" And I'd be
that's
like,
why
we need every one of them.
Yeah, that's why you need an enabler wife. We joke all the time that we just enable each other to buy guitars and fucking vinyl.
Yeah, no. Actually,
So I was like, oh, do we need this? Yeah, we definitely need that. You should buy that.
I'm fortunate because she is definitely like, we need record collection, and I'm like, okay, cool. I can help with that.
Yeah.
Like I have a shitload of records already. I just, they haven't been played. Some of them have never been opened. I have records that are 10 years old. I have a couple of Daniel Johnson records that are 10 years old that have never been opened.
Nice.
They're in like that heavy, heavyweight vinyl, like
180 gram.
180 gram gatefold, like really, because that's the thing. Like I try to buy good when I, to quote a family quote is, buy it nice or buy it twice.
Yep. There you go.
Buy shit the right way the first time.
Don't get some weird foreign pressing that is.
I do have some
random
cool
shit.
Misfits records that are weird foreign pressings that are pretty rad though.
The weirdest one I ever got, I found a copy of Prince, the Black album, that was like his like super funky, like out of print record, and I found it on vinyl, one of the record stores in Santa Monica, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, this is obviously before he died, so before they opened the vault and just started throwing everything out, but right. I was super stoked to get it, and I got it home and it just like kind of sounded like shit, and I was just like, all right, whatever, it's fine. And then at the end of it, there's this like hair metal track, just out of nowhere, like no idea who it is or what song it is. It was just like the end of this record, all of a sudden, just total unrelated hair metal track on this Prince record.
That's kind of amazing, though.
It is a little bit. I need to like Shazam it to find out what it is. You really need
to figure out, because that might be something.
What if I have like the only record of this like, Holy Grail song?
It's like on a Prince record. Like 100 copies in existence. You're like, oh. Check it out.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah. My all-time number one favorite band is High on Fire, and I've done a lot of shirt work for them over the years, and I became friends with them and stuff. And then they were here probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I went to the show, and then like their drummer Des was like, "Do you have our stuff on vinyl?" And I was like, I don't. And he's like, well, come here. And he like gave me their entire catalog on vinyl. Like, nice. I was like, fuck. And I cannot wait to listen to those records really loud.
Yeah, I'm sure they sound great too. All their production always sounded really great.
Yeah, fuck yeah. They're the fucking greatest band that's ever existed, as far as I'm concerned.
Nice. I do like them a lot. They're great. Yeah. I get down with a lot of metal.
They're one of those bands that every single person I've ever said, I don't care if you like heavy metal, if you have a chance, go see them. And then people go see them, and then they come back and they're like, you're fucking right. Like, I don't like metal, but goddamn. Like, even my wife, she was like, first time I took her to go see them, she's like looked at me and like her face was just blank, and she was like, I've never seen anything like this ever. And so
nice. I've never seen them before. I would love to. I'll have to do it sometime.
Life-changing fucking, they're more Motorhead than Motorhead.
Nice. They always felt like one of those bands that just like always feels good. It doesn't matter like what they put out. They could put out the same record over and over, but it's a good record. It just always feels good. Like, I don't know, I feel like a way about like Darkest Hour or like bands like that. That's just like, yes.
Darkest Hour had a good run there for a while, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, their drummer Ryan was associated with my last band. So when we did our U.S. tour, we stayed with Ryan in Virginia.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's in Iron Reagan now, I think.
Right on.
Yeah, he's like the funniest fucking guy ever. Yeah, I like Darkest Hour because that's a really good band. Now, that is a band that I have not thought of or listened to in a long time, though. I'm probably going to throw them on for tomorrow too. Also, there was a bunch of those like metalcore bands in the 2000s that I listened to a lot. That like when it shifted to the 2010s, I'd stop listening to like all those bands.
That was all like Victory Records stuff, right? Wasn't Darkest Hour on Victory? It was like all the Chicago thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And Hatebreed and fucking All Out War and Sworn Enemy, all those bands, all those.
I saw Sworn Enemy when I was 15 in a shithole in Aurora, Illinois. I think it was Arch Enemy, Sworn Enemy. And it was just like one of those like just shitty bars that just felt like should not have a show like this there. You know what I mean? Because it held like 20 people.
Plenty of those.
Yeah. And I think I was like, I was probably 15, 16 or so. And I was like super, I wore a lot of makeup. I was like very glam and everything, And then I went to this Sworn Enemy, Arch Enemy.
That's pretty tough
show.
guy.
And yeah, it was definitely a lot of like, who the fuck are you? In this, shitty suburban show. Anyway.
Yeah, Sworn Enemy used to tour with DRI when I was doing, I did all the artwork for DRI for a long time. And so whenever they were in town, I'd go to the shows in LA and hang out. And Sworn Enemy did a couple tours with them. And so it'd always be like hanging out in the backstage area, shooting the shit with those guys. And they're like the most like New York hardcore dudes of all time. And they're all hilarious and just like, so many laughs with those dudes over the years. I've kind of missed that a little bit. I've been, especially now that I've been out in the Valley, I don't get out to shows very much and see all my people.
How is there not like, there's like 1.4 million people in the Valley. You'd think there would be some big venue, something,
Some small venue.
Yeah, anything. It surprises me that there's like so many people in the Valley.
I think the Agora Theater is as close as we've got to anything that makes sense. Like Agora Theater is pretty good. Like some decent bands come through there, but not enough cool bands.
But just like a few hundred capacity with like an actual stage, Yeah,
it would be nice. I'm not sure if you're familiar. There's a place called Maui Sugar Mill.
Yeah.
Tarzan. It's just down the road.
Kind of down the street. Yeah, we went the first time when Alex joined Shira Girl, right before she joined it, we went to see them play at Maui. Which is like fun. It's not really like a venue though.
No, it is definitely not. But it's the only place in the Valley that has punk shows anymore. I think there's still some stuff going on in like North Hollywood.
Yeah.
But like out here, there used to be a place called the Cobalt Cafe in Canoga Park that was awesome because it was all ages and they had every type of like kind of underground music. Like they had hardcore punk, they had crust, they had death metal, they had, like everything that you could, and it was like a bunch of different scenes and that place was great. And it's like it's like a flooring liquidator now.
Welcome to LA.
I know. And so, yeah, you're right. There is no like the Agora Theater is kind of, or the Agora, like, is it the Agora Theater? No,
is that the Canyon Club? Is that what you're talking about?
Club. Yeah. Agora Theater's in fucking Ohio.
Yeah. They definitely have like the bigger bands and they have like the dinner and all that kind of stuff. But
I saw
just
Black
for like
Flag there a while ago.
That sounds weird.
Foo Fighters played there a couple weeks ago.
That's right. I remember that. Do they have like the dinner table set up for Black Flag?
No. All that there's the floor, and the floor had no dinner tables, but like the edges of the floor did, and like the little step up spot did.
That would be hysterical if you went to a Black Flag show and it's just like you're sitting there for dinner, like you're just like eating a steak.
People there. It was like seeing Black Flag in 1982. There was like 50 people there.
But it almost seems as funny seeing Black Flag in Agora Hills, though. It just doesn't seem like their demographic, is what I'm saying.
You know what? All the dudes from Ventura County came down, like all the Nardcore dudes from like Point Jimenez and fucking Oxnard. They all came down. It was like packed with like 50-year-old gangsters, which is rad. It was totally rad. Yeah. But one of the bands on Slope that I did artwork for was the opener for like 3 tours in a row for Black Flag, and so I went to see them, and because the Black Flag now it's like really just Greg and
right.
So it was like going to see a cover band, but that was fantastic because it was a cover band I know all the words to, and like I got some beer in me and I got to sing along with songs that I love, and I brought my kids and like we all like had a little Black Flag moment because you can't really have those anymore. I was lucky I got to see Black Flag when they were still a real viable band like several times, and count myself very fortunate for that one.
Yeah.
Because they're way up there for me too, like way high on the list of favorites. But again,
Yeah.
like I have like 50 favorite bands. It just depends on what subgenre you want me to give you one for.
I definitely feel like I get jealous of people who got to grow up in these like scenes of when they were happening, and where you do get to say like, oh, man, I saw these legendary bands at whatever small place, and you know, I yell at my dad all the time because he, you know, grew up in the Valley and in you know, in the 60s. And I was like, you could have gone to the Strip in the 60s and you've seen the Doors. You could have done all this shit. What did you do? He never went. He just went to, I swear to God, he just went to Chase Tail at the Van Nuys drive-in. Was basically, he was just chasing girls. Anyway, but I don't get that, especially for, I started going to shows in the 90s. So, I'm sure there were definitely some legendary bands and stuff.
Oh, I'm sure you got to see some things for sure.
Yeah. I think there's like one show that I feel like was like my lucky show, and I saw Muse at the Metro in Chicago, which is about 1,000 people. I mean, it's a tiny little place, and it was $10, and it was at midnight. It was like before Absolution came out in the U.S. So they hadn't like blown up in the U.S., but I was like a super fan, so I went by myself, and so that was like the one show that I felt like I got to see something like before it like absolutely exploded,
Yeah.
But I get jealous of
if I wanted to start bragging, I could start bragging.
I bet you got a gnarly list. I can tell you all the bands that I saw way after I should have seen them.
I saw Nirvana with like 20 other people.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Was it before Dave Grohl?
Oh yeah, it was before their first record.
Damn.
It was like they had like the first 7-inch was out. I think that was it. And
crazy.
Yeah, it was like, I was in the right place at the right time a lot. But, like I was old enough to start going to shows by myself in like 1984. So I got to see like every one of the original major league hardcore punk bands, except for the Misfits, because they broke up like a year before I was old enough to go to shows.
Right.
And Minor Threat. And Minor Threat is, of course, my favorite hardcore punk band of all time. But I got to see all of them. I got to see everybody. Descendants and fucking Adolescents, and I got to see Social Distortion when they were still a punk rock band before they were a Johnny Cash cover band.
Yeah. Did you get into other Discord stuff?
Yeah. A lot of Discord stuff.
So like one of my biggest influences. Did you get into Shudder to Think?
I know the name, and I don't know that that wasn't a band that I could name songs off the top of my head.
Yeah, they were not. I mean, they weren't like. I mean, they signed to a major, so they definitely like branched off from Discord. But they're one of my favorite bands, and I would still say one of my biggest influences. And they started on Discord. They're just a lesser known Discord band, but I
definitely know the name.
Yeah, the album that broke them was 10 Spot, but it very similar where it's super poppy, but with a wide, really interesting riffs and chord progressions and stuff. That guy went on to write he wrote like the theme to The State and Reno 911, and he's like one of those like TV Wet Hot American Summer. He wrote all that stuff. So
there's a bunch of those that came out of the punk scene. The guy from Goldfinger is that guy too, I think, to a certain extent. He's like a major league producer. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo is like one of the biggest TV and movie, music writers in Hollywood. Like him and Danny Elfman from Oingo Boingo, like a lot of that first generation people.
Yeah.
Were like, oh yeah, that's right. Punk rock doesn't really pay the bills. Although I think Devo definitely was paying the bills, and I think
Oingo Boingo got pretty big too. But did you listen to the new Danny Elfman record?
I heard one song off of it, and it was like kind of almost like a grindcore song.
It's fucking awesome. The whole record is bananas.
I was like, somebody posted the video, and I was like, this is not fucking bad at all. And the thing that was crazy is that he's in the video shirtless.
Yeah.
And he's like ripped.
Yeah.
And I was like, Danny Elfman's like 70 years old.
Yeah,
And he's like,
he waited until he got he's 70 to get ripped and tattoos. And he's just getting more and more tattoos, and he raises chickens, and that's what he does. And now he just yells over heavy music.
I love it.
It was definitely a weird flex, I gotta say, but it's really good, and everybody plays on it. Fucking Josh Freese from the Vandals, and the guitar. What's the guitar player for the Vandals? Spacing out.
I'm not a huge Vandals fan after the first record, so I
right on. Anyway, yeah, he plays on it too, and Robin Fink from Nine Inch Nails is on there.
Well, I mean, I guess if you're Danny Elfman, you can pretty much ask anybody, and they're all going to say yes.
Of course, that was like the thing that's crazy about it to me is it's like Danny Elfman's got crazy money now, and he can do whatever he wants, and he can have whoever he wants to play, and he can finance the whole thing. So like you've got full orchestra, and you've got the best players out there, and on top of that, he doesn't give a shit if it sells. He just makes whatever music he wants. So it's crazy. Like it's crazy music.
That. I mean, if money does anything, it buys you freedom.
Yeah, totally.
And if you're not using the money you have, and you have that much of it to do freedom shit, like you're fucking wasting it. Yeah.
I feel like I'm definitely not at a Danny Elfman level, but this new record that I just finished is, for the first time I was like had the resources and the ability to like actually do it with other musicians, and I ended up like orchestrating it, and so there's strings and horns and low brass and woodwinds, and I made it a goal to make it so there's no samples on it. It's all real people playing it. So finally I had the ability to do this. So I was like, all right, well, we're stuck in quarantine, so I'm just gonna
Did you record all of it there in quarantine in the apartment, or did you get studio time? Like
we did things remote. So most players, I did it a few different ways. For all the orchestral instruments, for all the alto sax I did here at home, and then but my boss is a tenor sax player, and he is a great tenor sax player. So I would bring a recording setup to the distribution center, and we would record tenor sax there. And then I have remote players who would do everything at home, who have good recording setup. So I would print out sheet music, or send them sheet music. They would record it at home. So it was a nice way to do quarantine, because it took a long time.
That's rad. Like when are you looking at like releasing stuff? Because I'm obviously interested in listening.
Yeah, I hope good question. It's being mixed right now, so I'm hoping October. We'll see. It seems like a good month to do some spooky shit. Yeah, so hopefully it's going to be mixed by then. And then it was like that trip. I wanted to put everything out at the same time. Vinyl's ready to go, do a big launch, that kind of thing. And then I hear that I can't have vinyl until next year. So then it's like, wow, well, fuck, dude. Do I want to sit on this record for 7 months or whatever waiting for it? So I think I'll probably release it digitally and then have vinyl after.
Yeah, the people who want to buy the record are going to buy it whenever it's available. It's not like somebody's going to listen to it a bunch as in an MP3 format or CD, and then like when the vinyl comes out, they're gonna be like, I don't need that. If they want the vinyl, they're gonna buy it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and you self-releasing all of it, right?
Yeah, I do it all myself. I mean, unless somebody offers me tons of money or something.
I don't even know how that works anymore. Do you like send demos to people anymore? Is that like a thing that
I have no idea. I don't know. Somebody listen to this podcast, please write in. Tell us how the music industry works now. I don't Are there still record labels? I don't know.
Yeah, that is like, I hadn't even considered that. Like, I guess you can just send people like a link to your Dropbox, some record label. I don't know. Yeah. I guess you just make a digital press kit and just send that out to labels. I guess that would be how it gets done now, right? That would make the most sense anyway.
Yeah, traditionally it's solicited by your whoever, but
yeah,
I don't know how that works anymore.
We could random. When I was in the 80s, when I was in my band in the 80s, we like did a press kit, and like it got out to like all of the labels we wanted it to, but it also got out to like all of these agencies and people that we would have never ever sent it to and would have never expect to hear from. And so it was weird. We'd get like these like LA music management companies like sending us packets of information about representing us. And I'm like, I don't think you paid attention. This is spam. Because I don't think you paid attention to what we sound like. Because, you know. Anyway.
You got like Madonna's record labels reaching out to you guys. I mean,
well, the thing about that is that actually isn't super weird because she tried to sign Rancid. Like when after the first 2 Rancid records, she was trying to sign Rancid like desperately. And they decided to stick with Epitaph for Out Come the Wolves. But Maverick was like, they were up Rancid's ass, like big time.
All right.
So yeah, you.
So that's I not off brand. See, I totally could have been an executive. You know.
Yeah.
Would have been on this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that was another thing that I wonder about because when I was, I kind of made my bones as an artist doing, screen printed rock posters. That was kind of how I made my. Turned myself from an amateur into a full-blown professional designer and illustrator. And dealing with record labels A&R people for poster work, I was like, oh, A&R people. If those people went away, I don't think the world would be a worse place.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's that.
They kind of did, actually. I mean, when you think about it, it's not really like a thing anymore, you know?
Yeah, I mean...
Not quite like it used to be.
Like I don't even like like we were saying, like I don't even know what a record label even needs to be anymore. It's so weird.
I thought the way this works is you make some shit, you put it on YouTube, and then somebody sees it, and then they offer you money. And I'm pretty sure that that's how the world works now.
I'm pretty sure you're right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what happens.
Just a little bit, yeah. So anyway, that's my plan.
Put it on YouTube. Become YouTube famous. I love it.
With my PayPal link, basically, just fucking send me money.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to. We were chatting, and you'd mentioned you have a new single out with Madeleine Rosine singing on it, and she is a guest. She has been a guest on this podcast, and I know your wife has played with her. And that song is fantastic, and I had no idea that was even her singing on it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a cover of a song by France Gall. So Madeleine's great. She's an awesome singer, and she's super fun to work with. And I had this idea, I just kind of had fun doing kind of retro 60s pop covers in between other releases, So she's fluent in French. So I was like, oh, shit, we should do a French pop song. And I got like obsessed with this song by France Gall called Laisse tomber le fil. And forgive me because I'm not fluent in French, but so
I wouldn't even have attempted it myself.
Yeah, I was like, dude, you want to?
That's why I'm like, Patrick,
song?
Tell me about this because I'm not pronouncing that.
Yeah, France Gall is great. So she's a little lesser known. Serge Gainsbourg produced a bunch of her stuff, and Jack
I love
White.
That Serge Gainsbourg stuff.
Yeah, it's great. And Jack White reissued a bunch of France Gall records on Third Man. So anyway, I just got like obsessed with this song. I was like, let's do it. So we did, and it turned out cool. So we put it up and. Shared it, and we got like a ton of French people shared it, and I felt very proud of that. That the French actually dug it. But yeah, so that one's out now, and doing some other songs with her as well. But actually, something that I didn't even realize till somebody heard that cover, and they were like, "Oh, it's a song from Death Proof," and I was like, "Wait, really?" Oh. And I didn't realize it, but it is the ending of Death Proof. Is
circle back around to our Tarantino conversation.
Tarantino, yeah. I was like, oh shit, look at that, and it's it's the endings, like the credits sequence is an English version by April March of that song. So
amazing,
yeah,
amazing. All right, man, I'm gonna let you go and hang out with your cool ass wife, and thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, go and check out Patrick Windsor's stuff. You can find it online. I'll have links down below in the description to all of your social media stuff. And yeah, man, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming on. And when we start having people over after the reno, you and your wife are on the invite list. Yeah,
we would love to. Yeah, and we'll have to. I'll talk you into making me a shirt one day or something. Once we
for
start
sure. I mean,
shows,
anytime either of you guys ever need anything in that regard, let me know.
Awesome.
Cool, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.